Joachim Kroll, famously known as the Cannibal of Ruhr, he would terrorise West Germany for over 2 decades, claiming the lives of at least 14 people. His crimes were marked by cannibalism when he admitted to the police that the reason he cannibalised his victims was because buying meat was too expensive. Croll targeted women, young female children, often mutilating their bodies and keeping their flesh as trophies. This is a horrifying case of Joachim Kroll. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. I hope you're all doing so well. Oh yeah. Today we're jumping right back into Germany. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm lingering in Germany. I came across Joachim Kroll, hadn't heard of him before, read a bit about him, watched a bit about him, and I was like, oh my god, this man's on the list. I feel like now his story's in my mind, it's only fair that it's in your mind as well. We're in this together, so what I found out, I need to pass on. I'm sorry. If you're new here, hi, my name is Anna. If true crime is your jam, I highly suggest you subscribe, get the notification bell on, because I'm here for you every single Sunday, and sometimes I'm here on a Wednesday as well, telling you all the juicy details about these horrific monsters. Please remember to leave a like and comment if you enjoy this video. Share if you feel obliged, please. But without any further rambling and any further ado, let's get into the horrifying, crazy ass case of Joachim Kroll, the Cannibal of Ruhr. Honestly, you would not think it was April in Scotland. I am absolutely freezing. I wish you could feel my hands because cold. Anywho, right? I cover crazy cases every single week, and sometimes I get to the point where I think nothing can shock me anymore. I've heard it all. And then I find a case and I delve in. And let's just say my flabbers are gasted on the daily. Every time I research a case, I'm like, oh wait, it does get crazier. And that's exactly how I've felt whilst I've been researching Joachim Kroll. I hope I'm bringing you a new case. If not, I hope I'm bringing you some new information. But it's just like, it's so crazy. And I'm actually getting to a point where I kind of fear the world, because how the hell do we have these people existing on Earth? If I am blessed enough one day to have children, they're not going anywhere. I know what this world's like and who's in it, and they're not getting out to play. Nah. So Joachim Kroll, he was born on April the 17th. It's his birthday! When I'm filming this, it's April the 17th. It's his birthday. I don't know why I'm getting excited. I'm not excited, like, I'm not wishing him happy birthday because you suck ass, but that's weird. This video was meant to be. But he was born on April the 17th of 1933, and he was born in Heidelberg of Silesia. We've just covered Silesia, Carol Denke, Silesia, if you know, you know. Now, Joachim, he was the youngest of 8 children to a very well-known miner. So, you know, he kind of had big shoes to fill because his dad was quite the force to be reckoned with in the mining business. And to be honest, in Joachim's young life, especially when he was just born, life was not easy. It was the rise of the Nazi Party. So Germany was, like, some elements were all right and others were in complete shambles. There was a lot of starvation going on. Families couldn't afford to feed their children. It was just quite a tough time to be raised in. Now, Joachim, I don't know if it was because he was the youngest, but his father would just mock him constantly. And he would encourage the other siblings to mock him as well, which is just horrible. Like, if you're going to be a dad or a parent in general, don't be a freaking bully to your own child. But he would call Joachim weak. He would say that he was feeble, he was the weak link of the family, he was an embarrassment. Just really awful, horrible stuff that you should never say to a child or anyone. And it did seem as though Joachim, he was just the butt of everybody's jokes. He was constantly made fun of, he was pushed around, just further instilling in him that the things that his father said to him must be true. He must be weak. He must be feeble, like his dad says, because he's the one that everyone targets. He would just be humiliated and mocked on a daily basis, and it did get to the point where his self-esteem was just non-existent. It was on its ass. This boy didn't have anything nice to say about himself because of the things that had been instilled on him. As you can imagine, if you get told the same thing every single day by family, the people closest to you, the people who are meant to love and care about you the most, you're going to probably start to believe them. As a young child, Joachim was a frequent bedwetter, which, as you can imagine, just added fuel to the fire within the household. Yet again, he is the butt of everyone's jokes. They're making fun of him. This makes him feel like he is weak, he is feeble, he is what his family says he is. And he was just subjected to so much more humiliation. And this is where me and Joachim, we're going to part ways on empathy, because at this point right here, what he does, my empathy's out the window for you, son. I'm sorry. Joachim, at a very, very young age, he started sexually abusing animals. Little animals who were defenceless, who could not fight him off, who could not fight back in the way that they needed to. He was sexually abusing them. I don't know if this was this idiot's way of trying to prove, oh look, I'm tough now. But if you're sexually abusing like a cat or a dog or a little rabbit, something smaller than you, that just makes you a coward. It makes you a low-life scumbag. And quite frankly, remove yourself from God's green earth, because you don't deserve to be here. And he's only going to further prove my point. So if you think I'm being harsh, please stick with me, because trust me, there's fuel behind this fire. Now, I'm sure many of you, being avid true crime watchers like myself, you will know that animal abuse and bedwetting is 2 of 3 parts of the McDonald triad, which, if you're not familiar with, I'll give you a very high level short summary of what the McDonald triad is, but it's very important in a lot of these cases. So the McDonald triad is also known as the homicidal triad, and it is a psychological theory that basically has 3 elements to it: fire starting, bedwetting, animal abuse. And they say that these 3 specific behaviours is indicators of someone who might have violent tendencies as well as sociopathy in adulthood. So it's thought that the abuse to animals is an outlet for anger. Setting fires is for anger, frustration, and getting out aggression. And then the bedwetting, that's often linked to feelings of distress and humiliation, which we know he was in his own house. So the McDonald triad was first brought in 1963 by psychiatrist J.M. MacDonald, but there is a lot of people that challenge that these days, because further research that was done by separate psychologists, etc., they've actually determined that these 3 things, animal abuse, bedwetting, fire starting, is more often linked to childhood trauma, neglect, which again, we know that he had, but at the same time, this guy is a homicidal maniac. So, you know, maybe 2 exist at once. And as you will know, if you've done history, which history was my favourite subject at school in particular, I love learning about like World War, World War One, World War Two. And during World War Two, families within Germany, they were really struggling. A lot of them were starving, a lot of poverty was going around, and this very much affected the Kroll family. Now, Joachim and his siblings, they were still growing and developing at this age when they were going through this starvation. It sort of stunted their growth and development. This was subject to more humiliation and taunting from not only in his home but at school. And it's like, how horrible are bullies? Because this young boy is losing weight by the week because he does not have enough money or food to feed himself. And yet people find that to be the butt of the joke. Where does that make sense in these people's brains? Now, Kroll's father, he would go on to be a German soldier in the German army, but he was actually taken as a POW, so prisoner of war, by the Russian army. And it was believed, because no one really knows what happened to him, but it was believed that he had ultimately been murdered by the Russian army. This then left Kroll and his 7 siblings in the sole care of their mother, who could not make ends meet. 8 children and herself, that's a big household to try and feed. She's trying to work, she's trying to do everything. It's just impossible for her. In 1948, Joachim Kroll, he would quit high school. He actually had to repeat several grades multiple times. So when he left, he only had a 4th grade level education. Apparently, he couldn't really read, he couldn't really write. He had an IQ of 76, which doesn't really come as much of a surprise when you hear how much he struggled. But there is a few questions regarding his IQ, and some people believe that he actually pretended to be slower than he was developmentally, because things that he goes on to do in the future would indicate that someone is more well thought out than they would expect him to be with an IQ of 76. But we'll get there. Why am I rushing ahead? So at this point, Joachim, he has left school. He's deciding to go out into the world of work, that great big world that we all just love to be part of, right? Working for the man every day. Love it. I don't love it. Save me, honestly. But he's thinking to himself, do you know what? I'm going to turn my life around. I'm going to better my life for me. And I'm going to be where the family curse stops. Like it ran in the family until it ran into me. Joachim really thinks that he's going to be turning everything around. So he would get a job as a farmhand. And unfortunately, this job would really allow him to develop his bloody appetite. So whilst working as a farmhand, Joachim, he would get to help kill the animals, which, as we know, this sick little parasite absolutely loves to do. Now, not only would he get to kill the animals, sometimes he'd just get to sit and watch. And sometimes for him, that was half the fun. Being able to watch as these little animals went through hell. Now, one of his favourite things that he ever got to witness on this farm was when he first witnessed a pig being slaughtered. He said that this awakened his sexual appetite, and it was at that moment when he was like, oh my god, who can I have sex with? I'm sorry, you can have your fetishes, you can do whatever you want, but there's lines, and the line is drawn way before that. If you get your jollies by watching harm come to people or animals or whoever, whatever, you are a dirty, wrong one. And you should be locked up. And it's like, I just don't understand how the hell with these people, why does death rev their gears and blow their hair back? Like, why can they not just have like a foot fetish or something else, like whips and chains, 2 consenting adults, more if you really want? Like, I don't understand how someone's brain can associate a fetish with death. So anyway, Kroll at this point, he's looking to get his jollies. He's looking to get his sick desires fueled. And he would attempt to have a relationship with a young woman. But this relationship ultimately failed because every time him and the young woman had sex, he'd be like, baby, was that good for you? And she'd be like, nah, not at all. You underperformed. I'm not satisfied. And this was the same result every time. Like, he's getting his jollies, he's having a rare old time, he's, and she's just laying there like, when's it my turn? When will this get better? So Kroll at this point, he just feels like an absolute failure, he feels humiliated again, and he calls the relationship off. Yeah, because like his ego just couldn't take it. Like, what do you mean she wasn't fulfilled? But then he realised that what he really wants isn't to fulfill someone else's desires. He wants to fulfill his own desires. And he decided the kind of person he wanted was someone who could not talk back. Someone who could not give him feedback. Someone who wasn't conscious, or someone whose feedback just would not matter to him. So in 1955, Joachim, his obsession and desire around death was at an all-time high. It just seemed to intensify even more when his mother passed away. Now, it was almost like she was the glue that held the family together, because as soon as she passed away, the siblings, they all just went their separate ways, lived their separate lives, and Joachim, he never really heard from them again. Lucky them. And honestly, he wasn't too fussed at this point anyway, because he thought, well, less people around, I can really just go after the things that I want. No one to disprove what I'm wanting to do. And horrifyingly, this would be the first year that he would commit his very first murder. So on February the 8th of 1955, Kroll had set off to the village of Valstede. Now, it was whilst he was in Valstede that he would encounter 19-year-old Irmgard Strell. Now, Irmgard, she was described as being this truly beautiful young woman. She had blonde hair. This day she was dressed in like head to toe green. She looked absolutely stunning. She caught the eye of many. But horrifyingly, she really, really caught the eye of Joachim Kroll. At the point where Irmgard had met Croll, she was a runaway. She was really struggling in life at this moment. She was in a vulnerable position, and it was this vulnerable position that she was in that made Croll feel as though she was his for the taking. So they meet each other along a road, and Croll says to her, why don't we go for a nice walk in the woods? We can chat, get to know each other. And horrifyingly, Irmgard agrees. She thinks this man's just friendly, he's someone to talk to. She's a runaway, she doesn't get to talk to many people that often. What harm could it possibly cause? So they walk into the woods, and when they're around 120-ish metres away from the road, this is when Croll tries to put the moves on Irmgard. She's having none of it. She's not attracted to him. This isn't what she wanted. She thought this was a friendly walk, a friendly chat. Suddenly this man's grabbing her, trying to kiss her, and of course she resists. This is a stranger. She doesn't know him that well. She doesn't want to be with him. So Irmgard, she pushes off this weaselly, scrawny little man and tells him, no, you can't just do that. This isn't why I agreed to come into the woods with you. And as you can imagine, Kroll again at this point, his ego's been squashed, and he believes that he can just do anything that he wants with Irmgard. Why not? That's what he thinks. He grabs her, pulls out a knife, and stabs her in the neck 4 times. And it's just absolutely horrific, but once he stabbed her in the neck 4 times, this just isn't enough for him. He then proceeds to strangle and rape Irmgard, before then cutting open her stomach in the way that you would slaughter a pig. Her insides were basically on the outside of her body, and her body would be found 5 days later covered in snow and some brush, just laying along the side of the road, discarded like she was nothing. And it's just so awful to think about the people who are going to find this young woman who's been slaughtered essentially. Like the trauma they must have faced and what she must have faced in her final moments with this vicious monster of a man. It's just soul destroying. It was documented that there was a huge amount of sperm found inside her vagina, on her abdomen, scattered through her pubic hair. It looked like someone had, yes, raped her, but then also masturbated over her body. And if you think this guy can't get any worse, any creepier, freakier, you're so wrong. Because every time this man murdered, he went home to his rubber sex doll, had sex with his rubber sex doll, whilst he strangled a baby doll. I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say about someone like this. Can these people no get a hobby, like something mindful, that they're not going to sit and destroy other people's lives and do the weirdest what? Then in 1956, this absolute monster would encounter a 12-year-old girl by the name of Erica Schuleter, and she was in Kirkillen. When he approached her, he put on this nice, kind facade, as he always did, just wanted to talk, was being friendly. Then he attacked her, raped, and strangled her to death. Then on June the 16th of 1959, Kroll, he would encounter and murder yet again a 24-year-old woman by the name of Clara Frieda Tesmer, and this was in Rheinwiesen. Kroll and Clara, they had encountered each other on a bridge that was above the Rhine River, and immediately Kroll, again thinking that this woman is his for the taking, he loves the look of Clara, grabs her by the arm. He's like trying to lean in, trying to kiss her, just like an absolute creep and weirdo that he is. Clara resists. Get this weirdo off of me. Like, get your hands off. He's saying to Clara, like, oh no, like, come on, like, you'll enjoy it, baby, blah, 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 blah. He's trying to, like, drag her by the arm somewhere, and Clara is just resisting and fighting him off. And again, this bruises this tiny, small d energy man. And immediately, Kroll, he sees red. He starts attacking Clara as brutally and viciously as he can. He's beating her in the head to subdue her. They're both then rolling along the side of the road, basically, she's trying to fight him off and he's trying to climb onto her. Clara is fighting for her life against this man who is trying to undress her whilst attacking her. And it would be during this fight between the two of them that he would strangle her to death. And it would be during the murder of Clara that Joachim comes up with his signature, the thing that he is going to do to all of his victims. And he decides to cut flesh from Clara's bum, from her thighs. He wraps it up, takes it home, and then he cooks and eats it for dinner. Another cannibal. It just makes you sick. Clara's naked and beaten body would be found the very next day by 5 young boys who were just out riding their bikes. Now, unfortunately, there was a man by the name of Günther K. Now, he was last seen with Clara. When they're trying to retrace Clara's steps, people recall seeing her and Günther together. They had been to a tavern, they then went on to another tavern, and then Clara had disappeared. Or at least that's the timeline that most people knew. So Günther is arrested, he's taken him for questioning, and unfortunately for him, his alibi is one that cannot be proved. He wasn't with anyone else. When he left Clara, he went home and was by himself, so he had no one there to back him up. Because of this, they hold him for 6 months. By the time the final inquest was finished, Günther wouldn't be released until April of 1960. And then there's another man. Honestly, they're just going after everyone apart from the person who actually committed the murder. But Heinrich Ott, he was also arrested and thought to be the suspect, the person who had murdered Clara. He wasn't, of course, as we know. But this man hung himself whilst awaiting trial because he could not bear the thought of people believing he could be capable of something so outrageous and horrible. Then Kroll's next known victim was 16-year-old Manuela Nott. She was murdered on Sunday, July the 26th of 1959 in the city forest of Essen. Manuela had been raped, she had been strangled to death, with pieces of her thighs and her bum also being removed. And I'm so sorry because this is so disturbing. I mean, the whole case is, but after Croll had finished murdering Manuela, he then masturbated over her pubic area, over her face and her hair, just everywhere that you could see, almost trying to humiliate her. Now, police had said that there was so much semen at the scene of this murder that they believed it was a gang of perverted youths who had done this, purely due to the amount of semen left at that scene. That just tells me that he stayed with her body long after she was murdered. And then we have Barbara Bruder, who was just 12 years old when she was murdered. She was murdered on September the 3rd of 1962 in Burscheid, Klein Hamburg. This little girl was on her way to a playground to meet her friend when she would be intercepted by Joachim Kroll. Her friend waited on her arrival, but of course Barbara hadn't turned up. She had taken a shortcut through the woods that she would usually take when she was going to go and meet her friend. But Kroll was waiting in the woods for her. Kroll came out, he attacked, raped and strangled Barbara to death. And this little girl's body has never ever been found, and this leads the police to believe that Barbara had been taken home by Croll, her body dismembered and discarded of. Most likely some of it would have been eaten. Petra Geis, she was only 13 years old when she would be brutally murdered by Croll on Easter Sunday, 23rd of April 1962. This was in a forest outside of Dinslaken, Bruckhausen. Again, this little girl, she was visiting the fair with a friend when she would be abducted by Croll. Petra was found the next day. She was inside some bushes and she had been strangled with her own scarf that she had been wearing. She had been strangled to death, she had been raped, and her body was partially cut up. This little girl's red dress that she had carefully picked out to go to the fair that day had been completely ripped off her body. All the flesh on her bum had been completely removed, as well as the flesh on her forearm and her left hand. Then we have 13-year-old Monika Tefel. She was on her way to school on June the 4th of 1963 when she would be spotted by Kroll. When Kroll had attacked Monika, he had dragged her into a rye field, he strangled her to death, he raped her, and then he also mutilated this little girl's body. He had stripped flesh from her bum, from her thighs. He said he made steaks out of Monika, and then he masturbated all over her body. Now, there was actually a known paedophile in the area at this time, and this paedophile had been blamed for the murder of Monika initially. Now, he was eventually found innocent, he was released from prison, but everyone in the community disowned him. People sneered at him wherever they went, they abused him wherever they went. People in shops refused to serve him. And one day he had taken himself out into the woods and he hung himself. You know, I can't feel bad for the guy. He's a known convicted paedophile for previous convictions. I can't sympathise with a paedophile, unfortunately. Before I get into the rest of the victims of this case, you're probably wondering, why had no one looked at Kroll? Why had no one suspected him in these murders? There's many different reasons. I mean, the main ones I would say is the methodical way in which he picked his victims. He didn't have a victim type as many other killers would. He also travelled to different areas all over Germany to pick up new victims. He also seemed to have a lot of self-awareness, which really kept the police on their toes. They had no idea that these murders were the working of one person to begin with. And due to the planning and the premeditation of his murders, many later experts believed that his IQ must have been a lot higher than 76. But I don't know, because I don't know. I don't know. Now, there was many other murderers operating around the same time as Kroll, and he used this to his advantage because oftentimes, because he didn't have a certain victim type, he would sometimes copy the victim types of other murderers to keep police off his scent. So there was a murderer at the time who was going around murdering couples, and one evening, Kroll decided he was going to murder a couple to make it look as though it had been the work of this other murderer. So on August the 22nd of 1965, Kroll had spotted a man by the name of Hermann Schmitz and his fiancée having sex in the front seat of their car. Now, they were in like this little lover's lane in Grossenbaum, and Kroll seen them and he thinks, perfect opportunity. I'm going to spy on them first, watch them have sex because I'm weird like that. And then I'm going to go in for the kill. So Kroll, he is very carefully spying on them for a period of time, and then he makes his way over to the vehicle without being seen. Now, his plan was that he was going to kill Hermann Schmitz, and then he was going to rape and kill his fiancée. So he goes over to the car, he takes out his knife and he plunges his knife into one of the car tyres. Obviously now Herman's like, what the hell just happened outside? So he gets his clothes on, he goes out to investigate and see what's happened to the car, which is when he discovers that the tyre is now flat. Out of nowhere, Kroll jumps out and he stabs this man repeatedly in the chest in front of his fiancée. His fiancée is screaming, crying in terror. She has no idea what to do. And Kroll just looks at her with this evil smile. Now, the fiancée thinks very fast on her feet. She jumps into the driver's seat of the car. She's blaring the horn. And then she just puts the foot down and heads towards Kroll with the car, trying to knock him down. Now, because she had been blaring the horn, very shortly after, the area was swarmed with loads of other vehicles, people concerned, thinking something bad was going on, because it was. And Hermann Schmitz just lay on the ground bleeding out in his fiancée's arms, and the murderer was nowhere to be seen. Then around 7 p.m. on Tuesday the 13th of September of 1966 in Fosterbush Park, 20-year-old Ursula Rolling, she had left the Capri ice cream parlour where she had been with her boyfriend for around an hour and a half. It was like a little date night thing that she had been on. Now, on her way home, she often cut through the park. It was a quicker way to get home. It meant she wasn't out walking too long by herself. This park had always been a place where Ursula had felt safe. She felt like she was close to home, but this would be the night that would change everything. Because when Ursula was walking home through that park, she would be attacked and murdered by Joachim Kroll. Now, Joachim, he had approached Ursula. He's doing his party piece. He's trying to talk to her. When Ursula doesn't want to talk, she's saying, I just want to get home. Like, it's late. I've been out on a date. I'm not interested. Sorry. See you later. Joachim's not having any of it because his ego cannot be bruised. And if he wants something, he's going to take it from you, whether you want it or not. So Joachim, he is grabbing on to Ursula. He's trying to pull her in, trying to kiss her, trying to get with her, as he always does. He then grabs her by the neck and drags her off into the bushes. Once he's got Ursula in the bushes, she is trying to fight him off. He throws her to the ground and he strangles her unconscious before she can fight him off. Joachim then proceeded to strip this young woman of all of her clothes. He raped her and then strangled her even more to make sure she was dead. And I'm not entirely sure what revved him up so much about this brutal murder in comparison to them all, but he said that when he got home, he was still red hot and that he had sex with his blow-up doll multiple times and also with his own hand multiple times that very same evening. That sick mess of a monster. And then on December the 22nd of 1966, 5-year-old Ilona Hark, she would also be murdered by Croll. This 5-year-old girl, 3 days until Santa Claus comes, she's probably so excited, so happy at this time of the year. And unbeknownst to her, she's going to lose her life. She was abducted, strangled, raped, and drowned to death. Now, drowning, of course, is different from everything else that we've seen when it comes to Croll, but he said that the reason he drowned this little girl was because he wanted to see what someone looked like when they drowned. He wanted to see the terror, the fear, the grabbing on for dear life. He wanted to witness that. And then on the 22nd of June of 1967, 10-year-old Gabrielle Putman, she would also be attacked by Croll, but she would survive. Croll had lured Gabrielle to a meadow. Inside this beautiful, lovely meadow, he said that he wanted to show her something. So Gabrielle, she goes in, she asks him, what were you going to show me? Like, can I see it? This horrific man, he proceeds to pull out pornographic images to show this 10-year-old girl. She's obviously horrified and terrified, and she tries to run away, but Kroll grabs onto her. Once Kroll has a grab of Gabrielle, he starts to strangle her. But suddenly, out of nowhere, these loud sirens start wailing, and this spooks Kroll, and he runs off thinking that he's left Gabrielle for dead. But this little girl survives. Now, she makes it home, she tells her family what happened to her, but Gabrielle and her parents, they wouldn't report this for 9 years until Kroll had been captured. I don't know if they were living in fear that they might not find the perpetrator and that he might come back and finish Gabrielle off. I'm not entirely sure what was behind that, but they never alerted the police. Then on July the 12th of 1969 in Essen-Werden, there was a 61-year-old woman called Maria Hetgen. She had been walking on the banks of Baldeni Lake when she would also encounter Kroll. Kroll does his usual party piece. He tries to speak to Maria, who is not interested. She's just out on a walk. She just wants a quiet day, a quiet life. And this man, again, cannot stomach a woman telling him no. And he proceeds to bludgeon her over the head. He's knocked her semi-unconscious. She's kind of in and out. He drags her into the bushes. And he rapes a 61-year-old woman before then strangling her to death. This evil monster, a 61-year-old woman who won't be able to defend herself, who's maybe a bit weaker, a bit more vulnerable, and he does this to her. Then on May the 21st of 1970, Kroll had seen a 13-year-old girl by the name of Jutta Rahn. She was disembarking a train that Kroll was on, and he decides, hey, this is going to be my stop as well. So he gets off the train, he follows Jutta. She's making a shortcut through the woods to get to her home. And who follows her along this shortcut? Kroll. This man attacked this young girl in the woods. He raped her and strangled her to death, just leaving her body for anyone to see. And then we have Karen Toffer. She was just 10 years old when she was raped and murdered on her way to school on May the 8th of 1976 by Joachim Kroll. A little girl on her way to school. Honestly, things like this case just turns my stomach, and I want to say I can't believe these people exist, but by this point I actually can. And it is so scary to think of the people who exist in this world. Now, I'm sure you will all be very glad and relieved to know that we're now arriving at the downfall of this absolute monster. So it's Monday, July the 3rd of 1976, and on this day, Kroll would target and abduct a 4-year-old little girl by the name of Marion Kettner. Kroll had taken Marion back to his apartment where he proceeded to strangle this little girl to death and then rape her. When he was finished with Marion, he decided that he was going to cut up her body and dismember her limbs. Once he had done what he'd done to Marion's body, he's now having to get rid of the parts that he's not willing to consume. And so he's attempting to put body parts, put organs down the toilet, in a shared toilet within his apartment building. And neighbours would later be complaining that the pipes of the toilet had been blocked. So it's later in the day and Croll comes out of this shared bathroom and one of the neighbours approaches him. He's been in and out all day, maybe he's got a bit of the rhea, might have a wee sore stomach or something like that. And the neighbour asks him, do you have any idea what's going on? Why is the toilet so blocked up? It seems like the pipes are completely blocked. Do you know what's blocking it? Joachim Kroll looks his neighbour in the eye, he laughs, and he responds by saying, guts. Guts is what's blocking the pipes. His neighbour laughs nervously, but ultimately thinking it's just a dark joke, dark humour. But when he glances over into the toilet, he sees what appears to be tiny organs floating around. These organs were the organs of Marion Kettner, that 4-year-old little girl. This neighbour, of course, contacts police immediately, gets him over there as quick as possible, and police were actually in the neighbourhood searching for Marion Kettner, who at this point they only knew was missing. Police arrive and they remove the toilet from the shared bathroom, and when they do this, they find Marion's heart, lungs, kidneys, liver, and then when they go into Kroll's apartment, they find Marion's hand cooking on the stove alongside carrots and potatoes, and the other body parts that Kroll wanted to consume, they had been put in the freezer. So Kroll at this point, he's arrested immediately. He's brought in for questioning. Why has he done this? Why did he murder this little girl? And then he tells them that he's murdered at least 13 others. When the police ask if he's been eating his victims, he admits that he has been cannibalising on them. And when they ask why he done this, he looked them dead in the eye and said, because buying meat, it's expensive these days. buying meat is expensive, so you turned to murdering people. Now, whilst in prison, Kroll had fully cooperated with the police. He actually believed that whilst he was in prison, they were gonna give him an operation to remove his homicidal urges and tendencies, and then they were gonna let him go. Like, operate on him, let him walk free. Obviously, it's just, it's not his fault. This, of course, did not happen. Like, honestly, what fantasy land does this daydreamer live in? Because, what? After 7 years, he would be charged with 8 murders and 1 attempted murder after a trial that lasted 151 days. So he was sentenced to life in prison in April of 1982. However, in 1991, he would die at the age of 58 due to a heart attack, which, honestly, hooray that he's dead. Ding dong, the witch is dead. Love that. But letting him off a bit easy. I feel like the prisoners should have got involved, the wardens, the correctional officers, families of the victims. Yeah, I think they should all have been put in a cell with him, tied up, and allowed to do whatever they want. And I know that's harsh. I know some people won't agree with that. And obviously, the way I say it is a bit tongue in cheek, but ultimately, let them in and let them do whatever they want. Because how can you be out there taking the lives of innocent people, innocent children, and barely receive any consequences? Yeah, okay, prison for life, great. But death penalty? That would have been nice. Or some form of horrific death for him. But my loves, that is it for this true crime and makeup episode. I really hope this one was interesting for you. It is lesser talked about, so hopefully it's one lesser known to yourselves, or if you do know about it, hopefully I could give some extra information somewhere in there. Fingers crossed. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure you do subscribe, get that notification bell on, because I'm here for you every single week with a brand new interesting true crime case. Please remember to leave a like, leave a comment, share the video if you feel obliged. It would mean the world to me. Any case suggestions you have can be left in the comments down below. My social media handles will be left down below alongside the products that I've used on my face today, with direct links in case there is anything you like to pick up. But I think that's it for today. So on that note, be a good person, do not be a bad person, stay safe, look after each other, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!